The problem right now with the 28-point plan that Donald Trump and his team are proposing to the Ukraine to deal with Russia is that it makes no sense. It makes no sense on a number of dimensions. One, just in terms of context, it doesn't make sense because even though Putin is the head of Russia and was never the head of the USSR, the way Russia is acting right now is akin to the way the USSR behaved when I was a teenager. And the threat is perhaps worse. There's been blatant and reckless threats of using nuclear weapons every which way. And that, along with the unyielding and ongoing imperialistic invasions westward, indicate that we are dealing with a geopolitical situation that's closer to the 1980s than what we saw in the early 2000s. So that's the geopolitical context. And I think that handling Russia right now as though it's Russia and not the USSR, and not the way Reagan handled the USSR, and with that level of doubt and skepticism, is extremely dangerous and extremely naive. I think we've also got an issue. First, I'm going to talk about content because the 28-point plan is illegal. It's illegal because the UN Charter does not allow imperialistic countries to just invade the borders and take land from others. And their follow on, there's the UN Resolution 2625, which also prohibits the acquisition of land by force. It is to geopolitical territory what rape laws is to taking and invading the boundaries of a person's body. It is you cannot invade and take. That's not legal. It's not legal in the charter. It's not legal in the resolutions. However, that is exactly what has been done repeatedly over time. And that is what we're seeing. So any agreement that builds on the premise that that's okay is not a legal agreement. The second issue with the content is that it's basically just a copy paste or replay of Minsk 1 and 2. At each time, Russia has said, we'll be good, we'll play nice, and that it invades Crimea and that it invades Ukraine. Each time making many people suffer, killing many, wounding many, but also making Europe and the US look the fool because it's quite predictable that as soon as the ink is dry here, and maybe even before the ink dries, there's going to need to be a need for a Minsk 4. There's no indication. On the contrary, there's indication that we should not expect this to finish at any point. Putin's talked repeatedly about the root cause of the issue, but there seems to be no end in the appetite for creating boundaries around Russia to suit his needs. And then finally, Ukraine gets nothing. It basically says, you've fought, you've lost. We don't have a specific number, but we know over 1 million Russians have been killed, so hundreds of thousands have been killed or wounded, and we're just going to stop where we are now. As an aside, I'm recently divorced, and I found the court system and family law to be so challenging. Most of what I've been able to do is just say, this is how bad it is, but let's just put it down so it's recorded and on record. And that is fundamentally what Trump is asking Ukraine to do. It's not based on principle. It's not based on what's right for anybody, for families, for children. It's just taking it. It's not even on the chin. It's just taking it. And it's not right. So those are issues with content. As far as issues with procedure, those are equally bad. Anything dealing with these types of issues around border sovereignty and war needs to go through Congress, needs to go through Marco Rubio, needs to go through the National Security Council and the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, not to mention NATO and the United Nations. The Security Council should be playing a leading role. It is sitting on the sidelines and maybe watching. At this point, its core reason to exist is in question. But there are process issues everywhere. And there's the issue, most fundamentally, that Donald Trump is not the United States of America, and he keeps acting like he is. And he keeps getting that confused. And it's not okay. Lastly, if he is the consummate deal maker that he thinks he is, why is this deal or this plan so bad? It's just jotting down on paper what's already happened. It's not a deal. I can't help but wonder, what negotiating leverage do we not have visibility to that would cause a man of this stature and of his deal making prowess to back down? Because it's no deal. Ukraine gets nothing. US gets nothing. Europe gets nothing. We just take it. For what purpose?